Okay, so quite a few things have changed since yesterday. Talking about the spoilers, of course, that we got. And this isn't me putting any blame on Red and Blonde 420 or Atsushi or anything. They can only go off of what they're given. I mean, not all of it was wrong, but the whole thing about the second and third users not accepting Izuku, that turns out to not necessarily be the case here. But as for the other stuff, I'll touch on it as we go through the chapter. So let's just get into it, because in the beginning here, Nana's saying, are you able to kill Shigaraki Tomura? Of course, this is picking up at the end of the previous chapter with that cliffhanger where she asked him that question initially, and she's just trying to gauge the intent of Izuku here. Because one of the themes of this chapter is like, hey, there's like a good chance you may have to like straight up put Shigaraki down. I mean, I know this is like a shonen manga and we always want to do the right thing, but like this guy's kind of like damaged beyond repair, and though he is like an innocent child on the inside, which is another recurring thing in this chapter, and there's also that chance you can talk no jutsu him into a face turn, which we'll get into later, but there's also a really good chance that you may have to take him out behind the shed, and you know. And then the first user gives us more insight into All For One, something that we were talking about in the spoilers yesterday, because he says he raised him that way, and Shigaraki state, my brother probably took over his body by now, which is obviously true. We've seen it happen multiple times now. All For One's will has probably all but dominated his mind already. This is another attempt by him to get his hands on One For All. In order for One For All to stay safe from the evildoers, we require our successors to have an iron will, a nigh infinite determination. Ours is a power all too valuable to be risked for just one lowly person. Shigaraki's probably going to use your lack of an iron will to his advantage. So it makes sense, you know, the One For All users need to have an iron will because it is an ability that can only be passed on to others through their own will. But apparently it turns out that like, if your will is an iron, or you just have a weak will, then One For All can be forcibly taken from you. All For One essentially figured this out himself. He raised Shigaraki to be his next vessel by, you know, corrupting his mind the way that he has to give him like this ultimate strong evil will so that it can overcome Izuku's will. Therefore, he can override the transfer failsafe ability of One For All and take it forcibly with All For One. Which basically boils down to All For One just was using Shigaraki this whole time. Also, another thing in case you're unaware, the name of the sixth user is revealed here. Now, in the spoilers yesterday, it said that his name was N, like E-N. But in the new translations, it's saying that his name is O''E''R. I don't know if that necessarily still means smoke, because that's originally what his name was thought to be, like just smoke, or just the Japanese word for smoke, meaning that there's a good chance that his quirk has something to do with smoke. I guess we're gonna have to wait for the official translations on Sunday to fully understand what's going on with this guy, but just know there's a chance that this guy has like a smoke quirk or something. Therefore, one of Izuku's next quirks will be some kind of smoke quirk. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, and that's ROTE Production. Considering you're a fan of manga, there's a good possibility you've come up with some ideas for your own series, but maybe you're not an artist and you'd like to collaborate with someone who could animate the manga for you. Well, that's where ROTE Production comes in, because this is the exact service that they provide. This is the team behind Rise of the Elites, one of the best up-and-coming action thriller online mangas. So if you are interested in a service like this to get your manga off the ground, you can contact ROTE Production on their Instagram page. You can also check out Rise of the Elites on Webtoons to see their work. But you're gonna have to act fast because they're a small team and they can only take on so many projects at once. So if you're interested in your manga coming to life, check out ROTE Productions. Links will be in the description. Thanks again. And then Nana, talking to Izuku, says, to my grandson, nay, if that thing reaches its potential, no one will be able to stop what comes next. The potential, I'm assuming, means once she goes 100%, because we've only seen like a 75% Shigaraki in the war, and he was already easily the strongest person there at that point. And it's very possible that if he does reach his 100% of his abilities, I guess he will be close to unstoppable. Because that goes back to the big thing Yujigo was always talking about, how All For One himself couldn't really fully harness the full potential of All For One, I guess, because his physical body like couldn't keep up with all of the quirks and power he was accumulating over the years. So that's why Shigaraki had to go through all those augmentations and everything so that his hardware could support the software, which also goes into another reason why All For One needed him to be the new vessel anyway. But going further, she touches on the other narrative of this chapter about how Shigaraki may have to, be taken out, saying that there are people out there who cannot be forgiven, comprehended, or rehabilitated. What if he's one of them? When a person looks like he wants to be saved when he simply cannot be saved. Can you tell me that you have the will required to stop him at all costs? And Izuku responds, and it eventually boils down to like when he was in the Vestige world, he could feel a child crying within Tomura. Going back to how Tomura is inherently innocent. Like he wasn't born to be the ultimate villain. He was kind of just in the wrong place at the wrong time. A victim of circumstance because he was the grandson of Nana. Therefore, All For One targeted him out as a result of that. Going further, Izuku says, I fought against many people thus far and they had their ways set inside of them, but I had no choice but to stop them by fighting, showing like Overhaul, Muscular, and Stain. And he says, but I never had the opportunity to explore their motivations and pinpoint why exactly they became villains. If I understood them fully, some things may have gone differently. Our fights could have resolved differently, perhaps. In my opinion, this is pretty much Izuku saying that, hey, if I had the chance, maybe I could have talked no jutsu them into a face turn or just submission, which means that there is the possibility that the big final confrontation between Izuku and Shigaraki can be resolved by talk no jutsu. Is that a bad thing? No. If it's handled properly, it could be pretty satisfying. But if it's like the standard, shonen talk no jutsu, then yeah, it's kind of disappointing. But let's not get our pitchforks ready yet, because obviously this chapter has been presenting us with the duality of this situation. It could either end via talk no jutsu, or it could end via... Pretty sure this is just setting up that like, hey, the final battle is either going to be one or the other, but don't be surprised if Izuku winds up with some blood on his hands, because he basically has no other options at that point. But then we come to the end of the chapter here, and the first user turns around and looks at the second and third, and he's like, how about you guys chime in now and help us out so that Deku knows what to expect out of the rest of you guys' quirks. So this is like a lateral shift in interest, in my opinion, coming off of the previous spoilers, because the spoilers yesterday made it seem like they didn't accept Izuku, which was kind of almost debunking the whole time travel theory. And again, I don't care if it's true or false. I think the time travel theory is interesting. I know it's super polarizing and there's a lot of tribalism to it, but what I ultimately want is just to find out who they are. And it seems like in the next chapter, that's gonna happen, right? But the last thing I want to touch on here is that the third user has what looks to be like mufflers on his shoulders or on his traps. Similar mufflers to like that of Ida, which obviously Kirishima doesn't have. This could be like one of the Ida family descendants. Maybe he's the original Ida. Maybe he's one of the first guys to have the engine quirk. Because as we've seen, they manifest on different body parts as the lineage goes down. So it's possible that the first guy or one of the first ones had them like on his shoulder/trap area. Meaning that Izuku would inherit the engine quirk, which is a little redundant because he already has super speed with One For All, but I guess this would just take it to the next level. As for the other guy, I have no idea what his quirk could be. He obviously looks like Bakugo, has the hair and the gauntlets, but I guess he's not Bakugo, so what his quirk could be is anybody's guess at this point. But let me know what you think about everything in this chapter in the comments. If you liked the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.